All right, so asked you guys to watch this video. I posted the link right after, in between part 3 and 4 here. This is part 4. Let's continue on. Let's talk about glycolysis, essentially section 7.2 in your text. Glycolysis is the initial step in the breakdown of glucose. It's a multi-step, 10-step process. We take glucose, which is a 6-carbon saccharide. It's a monosaccharide. We break that down into 2 3-carbon sugars. The final product is what we call pyruvate. And through that process, we do have to invest 2 ATPs in order to get the glucose into this unstable state where it will break down into these 2 smaller 3-carbon chains. And then once through that process, as it breaks down into the 2 3-carbon chains, then energy does get released. So we get these 2 NADH, which carries lots of energy, and then we get 4 ATPs back. So we put 2 ATPs in, we get 4 back, so we have a total of 2 ATPs out of this process. This happens in blood cells. This does not require oxygen for this process to occur. This is a very quick, fast release of energy. This is what we call anaerobic. This process does not require oxygen for it to occur. Now, it does not harvest all of the available energy within glucose. Now, I've got these 2 big 3-carbon chains, which still have a lot of energy, but it does get us started and does release some energy. This can just simply occur out in the cytoplasm of the cell. Your bacteria can do this very easily. They don't need a lot of specialized organelles like mitochondria to do to break down further. The pyruvates, the 3-carbon sugars, they can be broken down further, and in eukaryotes that occurs in the mitochondria. We have mechanisms in the mitochondria to break those down further, and that's the next section of the text that we'll talk about, okay, which is the citric acid cycle. So the citric acid cycle takes the pyruvates, right, which found a nice little GIF on the internet just from makeagif.com. I couldn't find the original author. But you have the 2 pyruvates that come from glycolysis, and those get converted through an enzyme we call coenzyme A into a form, acetyl-CoA, that can then enter this citric acid cycle. This occurs within the mitochondria. Okay? And so this is a cyclic process where those 3-carbon pyruvates, then we lose 1 carbon before it enters the citric acid cycle. They do lose 1 carbon and generate some CO2 here and release some energy into an NADH molecule. And then this intermediate, this acetyl coenzyme A, can then enter the cycle and go through. Right, and in detail, both your text talks in detail about this process. There's another video coming up here where I'm going to send you to another author that your textbook also mentions that does a much better job of explaining the technical details than I'm going to, and with nice graphics that I can't. Again, as I mentioned, this occurs in the mitochondria. Remember, we talked about the mitochondria. We said that is the power plant of the cell. This is part of the reason why. The Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, those are the same thing. You maybe have heard the Krebs cycle before. That's for the individual that first identified this cycle. This, again, is the process where we take the pieces of what's left of the glucose after glycolysis and begin to break them down and harvest even more energy. Okay, so, and as I mentioned, I've already mentioned this step. Before entering the citric acid cycle, we've got to break those pyruvates down into this acetyl coenzyme A, acetyl-CoA. Through that process, we release a carbon, okay, and we'll release a little bit of energy, and then it's ready to go into the cycle. All right, so I'm going to refer you out to another video. This one's also mentioned in your text. I'm going to refer you out to another video. I want you to watch this one next, and they do a much better job with really cool graphics explaining how the citric acid cycle actually works, much better than I'm going to generate in any reasonable amount of time. See you guys in a second.